So here I made a very pretentious slide, trying to be having a brand of Indigo somehow, yeah, whatever. So I will be presenting app development, Android app development specifically, and hopefully I'll try to add some real value and industrial value to you. And as you are the part of first and the second year, as I was the part of first and second year, I didn't have any knowledge of industry and how the app development industry works, how any development industry works. So this is going to be a session which will include that, and let's try to break it down and let's move forward. So my name is Hitesh Kohli. People know me as Kohli Bhai on Twitter somehow, and these are the technologies that I know. And like, of course, not all of them, but yeah, I know them. So the things that I want to talk about today is first is called base layers. Now, what do I mean by base layers? This is very interesting concept that I wanted to introduce. Um, let me draw it for you. I hope you can see my screen. So this is small, just a eraser thing that I want to. I'll draw and explain base layers to you. Now, what is base layers? Now, if you know economics, you might know base layers. If you don't know economics or industries, how industries work, you might not know base layers. Now, what happens in base layers? Imagine a circle, right? You can imagine a circle, right? Now, there's another circle of inside here. There's another circle right here, and these are all the just the layers, right? All of these layers are called base layers, right? You can represent them as these lines, right? Now, what these layers contain is basically the new technologies. Maybe it contains a different industry like fashion. It contains some kind of industry called. It might contain small industries like maybe cup making or plastic recycling. All of these layers define our economy. That's how base layers work. Now, at the top of this layer, at the very top of this layer. Now, what do I mean by experimental layer? Let me type it out for you guys. So this is experimental layer. I will show you. I'll try to show you. I'll show this after drawing this thing. Now about Rabbit R1. If you, I do not know if you have heard about it. It's a device which is AI activated voice device, just like your Google Assistant or Siri. And what this does is its main plan is to displace all of our mobile phones and introduce a voice interface device that will do just work like apps and completely disperse the technology of phones. You can just have this one device, you can speak to it, and it will do your job. That's how this Rabbit R1 is planned. And a lot of people bought it. What happened here is basically this new technology is a part of experimental layer, right? If you haven't heard about Rabbit R1, you must have heard about ChatGPT. Of course, everyone is using it. So that was the part of experimental layer. An experimental layer contains all the innovation in any kind of industry, whether it's fashion, whether it's any kind of industry. Experimental layer contains that. Technology is also the part of experimental layer, and ChatGPT was the toy that was, dipping its foot around in the experimental layer. Now, what happens after this experimental layer is super interesting. Now, when the something that is proven by the market and market wants that thing from the experimental layer, it actually penetrates from this experimental layer into a commercial layer. I'll type it out. Now, ChatGPT has actually penetrated from the experimental layer to the commercial layer. And what happens here is people start to pay for it. It becomes a part of our daily lives. And what happens after the commercial layer is it penetrates even deeper into our daily usage, somewhere that we are integrating it with everything. That's what exactly is happening with AI. We're trying to integrate and do startups around this one chat gpt as a wrapper. And that's how different layers of our economy works, right? Rabbit r1 is still in its experimental layer. I don't think so it will be viable to get to commercial layer as of now, but if it gets to there, it might displace phones and apps as an industry. But for now it's not there, and we will see some new experimentations in the future. But overall, why am I talking about base layers? Why is it important to you as an app developer? I want you to be industry aware as an app developer. Why? Because there's something lurking around in that experimental layer at the top of that layer to actually destroy your whole career, right? At that point, it might be Rabbit R1, it might be some another technology that is coming up in the future, and it might be lurking around somewhere there. It will come down into the commercial end as soon as it viable, right? And it will come down to the daily use. So you need to be aware that if it looks like a toy and it can be viable for the commercial layer, then it is a great toy to have, right? You need to move ahead of everyone to know exactly that toy might be of use. Like, if you take an example, today we have Apple Vision Pro that is being used and maybe advertised by Apple everywhere, so this was the part of experimental layer. AR/VR apps and AR/VR were the parts of experimental layer. They were the toys that everyone wondered about him. And certainly they are trying to penetrate them. The Apple Vision Pro is trying to penetrate it to the commercial layer until it gets to the daily use. So it's still in its toy phase, but it's still new, which means that it might be something that is lurking to destroy apps, that is lurking to destroy web, right? Because we will be not developing apps anymore for these things. We'll be developing apps for Vision Pro, VR, AR. These will be the new things. So that's why base layers are important. If you're an app developer, if you're a web developer, whoever you are, these players tend to understand that if something looks like a toy right now, it might not be the toy in the future. So be sure that if it looks like a toy, it might be an opportunity in disguise. So make sure that you move ahead, um, and try to experiment with those things, try to build something around those. And if you are successful before it penetrates into the commercial layer, you'll be the one who everybody wants. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Hopefully this makes the concept of base layer you know clear. Now, one more thing that I want to introduce is called, where is the nature being placed in base layer? Of course, base layer is a very big circle which occupies everything inside every industry that ever existed in this circle. Now what happens here is, actually, very deep down in the core, if we go very deep down in the core somewhere, right here, there is this mother nature. Now this nature takes a long time to actually evolve. That's why this is at the center of the space layers. It takes millions of years to actually evolve into something, and it takes millions of years to actually bring something out that's viable for the nature. So that's why it's at the center core of everything. And the experimental layer is the fastest layer. This is the layer where innovation is happening in the seconds, in the milliseconds, with a blink of an eye. So experimental layer is super fast, it's super experimental, but these are the toys that you want to play with as a developer. And these are the toys that build big industries in the future. So these are the base layers. Hopefully this makes industries and how they think, how they work, a little clear to you. And if you have any questions, please let me know about the base layers before I move to any other part of the topic.
Sure, sir. But first of all, what a great explanation of these layers. Uh, I wanted to ask you, like, currently everyone in this meet is in his first or second year only. So to us, to getting into the experiment layer is the toughest thing that we want to be involved in. So how what do you suggest for student like us to get into that experimentation, and how to get started with that experimentation?
Um, so this is the experimentation layer, as you can see. These are the people making joke of this experimentation layer, and these are just the toys, right? The Rabbit R1 is this thing. right? This is the Rabbit R1, if you haven't seen it. So this is just a toy, a voice activated AI machine that can just be an app. So here's this meme that has been going around in the Twitter, on the Twitter, like, why can't it just be an app? Why do we need a new hardware? So yeah, exactly, it's a new toy that has been moving around. Now, how do you actually play around and find something that's experimental? Just go on Twitter and find a small group of people experimenting, different things. Eventually you'll find, and eventually you'll step on some kind of new development thing. Twitter works this way, tech Twitter works this way. They'll give you something new and weird, and you'll think about it, why is this even here? Nobody has ever heard about Rabbit R1. It is not available in India. It's not a part of, commercially viable space. It's not available for sale anymore. So it's a very small group of people that know this thing. So you need to be on Twitter, you need to be on LinkedIn, you need to be on these social media platforms to know about experimental layer. But make sure that you're not totally observing and absorbing and going into Twitter. You don't have to do that, because if you do that, it's an echo chamber. You will be, just listening advices on advices and totally be confused about that. Understand what is real and understand what is happening in, like, on the Twitter. Just take this as a piece of cake, as a piece of advice, and just do your own thing. Do not take it too seriously. One thing that I wanted to, the one question, one quote that I always keep in mind is, I have this book right now with me. I was reading this book called by Naval Ravikant. If you know this guy, Naval Ravikant. Now, the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant is one of the greatest investors. He has invested into multiple big industries, Meta, Apple. He was an investor in all of that. So this is his diary, his How to Be Rich book. Right? There is one quote in this book called, and there's one chapter in this book called Learning Happiness. Now, this is learning happiness. And he assumes that happiness can be taught, right? Now, this quote is, don't take yourself so seriously. You're just a monkey with a plan. So, anything that you do on Twitter, anything you do out there building things, you're just a monkey with a plan. So, make sure whatever you're doing out of thinking, you're doing out of curiosity. Please do not be involved in echo chambers and think as if, you don't need to delude yourself into becoming something big. So for experimentation layer, go on social media, find people around you who are experimenting with this stuff already. You can follow entrepreneurs. They are the You can follow VCs. They are the first one to invest into experimentation layers, and that's how you find new technologies.
Sure, sir. Anyone else who wants to like ask someone from Hitesh, sir?
It'd be great if you ask.
Yeah, yeah, guys, please make this session interactive. Hitesh sir is a very very experienced developer in Android world. So please don't let this opportunity go.
You don't need to ask me about Android development as of yet. You need
Yeah.
to ask me why, like, please, I'm here to solve your problem. If you think that I'm not a great developer, I want to be a great developer, you can ask me about that. And I'm not a very, godlike developer, but I'll try to help you out as much as I can. So please ask things. If you don't ask, nobody will help you. So if you don't want to ask me, it's okay. Tag someone on Twitter and ask them. So that's what you got to do. If you guys want me to move on, I'll move to the second section again.
Sure, sir. I think people will become more interactive as we move on.
Yeah, sure, sure. Let me share you my thing again. So I have talked about base layers, and I wanted to talk about some Android development roadmap. I will go about, switching between industry and Android, switching industry and Android. That's what I'm thinking, at least. And I'll give you the roadmap right now. What you need to follow this roadmap to become a great Android developer. That's what I think, at least. I'll share it to you guys right now.
Sir, before starting out,
Yeah, sure.
there's Diksha. She asked, sir, I am a second, sir, I'm in second year and I have just started the Android. Is it too late for me?
I am an electrical engineer. I have passed out as an electrical engineer. I didn't even know CS. I didn't even know coding. I have, been coding from my last year, and I am an Android developer. So you're not late. You're way ahead of me. So yes, you can. It's very weird to ask if you're in second year and asking me that, like, is it too late? It's not too late. You're way ahead of a lot of people. Believe me, you're way ahead.
Sure, sir.
So this is the roadmap, and give me a second. So this is the roadmap, and of course you will know this website. Hopefully you do. If you do not, this is roadmap.sh. You can find all the roadmaps there, you know, about everything there is on this website. So React Native, Flutter, you can find anything that you want on this website. So this is a very good roadmap, and I followed this roadmap, and I learned a lot and shared all of the findings that I've learned on Twitter. This does not include a lot of things that an Android developer requires, not specifically Android developer, I would say an app developer requires. Like, for example, if you're a senior app developer, not me, you will require a mobile system design experience, right? I have already, you know, made many Twitter threads around mobile system design. There are not many videos around mobile system design as well. I will try to make a video around that as well. But for now, this is the roadmap. I'll introduce some of the parts to you guys and what do you need to learn for Android. First of all, pick a language. Do not pick Java. If you don't want to, bang your head against the door, please pick Kotlin. And hopefully, version control systems, GitLab, GitHub. you know GitHub is good. People, like one of my companies use GitLab, so it depends what people use. Hopefully you understand Git. Please understand Git, and it's very essential if you want to do open source. And development IDE, I want to talk a lot about development IDE, and I want to actually iterate over it in a way. Let me give you an explanation about IDEs first of all. Now, as we move forward into the programming, right now, Android development and stuff, as we become much more mature developers, we'll look into, as the AI comes into play and it start displacing small developers. What we will be doing is developing compilers. We will be trying to execute code, make the code much more easier to exist in our virtual world. So development IDE will be the new future where we'll be trying to code into compiler languages like C, C++. I'll talk about that in one of my sections. But for now, you need to know about IDE. How does it work? Which place to click on to add a remote repository in GitLab and whatever. And of course, the basics of Kotlin, basic of OOPS, data structure algorithms. You don't need to know about that in Kotlin. If you want to know about that, that's very good. You need to know about data structure algorithms, whatever your main language is. Maybe it's Java, C++, whatever you're using. You need to know about data structure and the algorithm. And you need to know about Gradle. I've written a lot on Gradle. Gradle is basically the thing that actually executes Android code on your mobile, and it makes it very easy, because if the Gradle didn't exist, the Android wouldn't have been that easy to execute, and create a basic hello world app. This is just a part of practice. I've also have a section of practicing Android app. I'll preach about that sooner. And app components. Now, these are basic components of apps. Now, these are the very important components. People usually don't clear it up and try to mess around with architecture. Please don't. Please make your foundations very strong before going into architecture. So, activity, services, content provider, broadcast receiver, intent, all of these components are very essential. They are the basic foundations. You can find a lot of videos. Philip Lackner has great videos on Android basics. You can find all of these app and layouts. You don't need to know about layouts if you're not using XML, and hopefully you aren't. If hopefully you're using Jetpack Compose. If you're using XML, it's all right. Please understand layouts. There are many apps that are using XML right now, and they need developers for their maintenance, or maybe transferring from XML to Jetpack Compose. That'll be the future of many developers. That So you need to know about little about layouts at least. So layouts are essential. Interface and navigation, Jetpack Compose, app shortcuts, navigation components. These are the basic views of how the Jetpack Compose works. If you do not understand what Jetpack Compose is, Jetpack Compose is a library written in Kotlin, which basically enables your Android development and makes the UI of your app. So Jetpack Compose is the library you use for the UI, and these are the many of the components. Buttons, you can write a button in Jetpack Compose to make a button. You can make a custom button as well, make a container, make a button, write a text. You can do that by yourselves, but buttons are already present. You don't need to reinvent the cycle if you don't want to. So yes. And architecture and design patterns, these are one of the most complex topics out there, because it depends it depends up to the organization how they try to be, you know try to architect their own app. It depends. I have been experimenting with architecture a lot right now, because it depends upon, the more complex the apps become, the more complex the architecture becomes. And it is very essential for any kind of app development. You need to learn about them sooner or later. This will be required in any kind of jobs. So take this in mind. Architecture, design patterns, they're very important. Repository pattern, builder pattern, observer pattern. You don't require, factory pattern, repository pattern. Like, you won't be using them solely. They'll be the part of something or the other. A dependency injection is very important. uh, Dependency injection is very important. Dagger, hilt, coin, coding. These will be the very essential parts. If you want to do just Android development, you don't want to go into like multi-platform of Android development, Dagger hilt will be your thing. Coin will be the multi-platform part of it. If you do not understand what I'm talking about in multi-platform, Kotlin, the Android app development, there are two ways to do app development. One is hybrid, and one is Kotlin, just the basic Android development, native development. And the hybrid contains of Flutter, React Native. These are the languages. But because of very good JetBrains new things that are coming out, Kotlin KMM has come out, and you can actually make native code. You can write native code to develop both app for web, maybe for desktop, for iOS and Android, all of these things in Kotlin and in the native languages. So KMM is essential. And if you want, many of the, and I think so, Netflix uses KMM. Threads, the Meta app, the just a substitute of Twitter, uses KMM. There are many apps out there who use. Forbes uses KMM. The many companies that are using, many big product based companies are using KMM. So KMM is a very essential part. But if you're going into service based company or looking for freelance, please do not learn KMM. Go for Flutter. Please develop your MVPs, then switch to KMMs. So I hope this thing is clear. And network requests, you need to, before you step into retrofit, or maybe there's one missing here, which is I think so, coin
Ktor.
and Ketor is missing. So yeah, Ketor is missing. Thank you for that. And okay, HTTP. Before learning retrofit or Ketor, please learn about HTTP. What is actually HTTP? Does it even, what is HTTP? Please have a little bit of curiosity and learn. Do not just randomly write code that you find on Stack Overflow. So retrofit, okay, HTTP, don't need to learn about Apollo Android. It's not used anywhere. Okay, HTTP and retrofit and Ketor. Ketor is again a KMP language, KMM language. Um, Please do not use the word KMP in any, in front of any Kotlin developer. He will get, very punchy in front of you. Don't use KMP. KMM is the word. So retrofit, okay, HTTP and Ktor. Now, one advantage of Ktor is that you can actually write backend, fully backend in Ktor as well. So you can architect a whole app, from backend to front end. You can become a full stack developer with the help of Ktor. So Ktor coin, these are some interesting things that you need to learn. I'm learning about Ktor backend as well. A little bit of it. I'm learning Flutter as of now. I do not know a lot about it, but I know a little bit about it, and I've been working on the app for my company as well in Flutter, and it's interesting. It's something new, and hopefully I will switch to Kit or learn more about backend and develop my own apps. I'll show you one of my apps as well. It's not ready as of yet, but I'll give you some kind of idea and hopefully give you some kind of inspiration to start your own app journey. So networks, storage, people use shared preferences, data store depends what you use. Room is again file system. There's one more called Realm, which is I think so the part of MongoDB that is being used. Please learn about asynchronous programming, coroutines, thread, RxJava. You don't need to learn about RxJava, Rx Kotlin. No, please learn about Work Manager. So coroutines, threads, I have written multiple articles, multiple threads. I've read maybe one book on this particular topic as well. So they're very essential. They're a very big part of whole Android development. You need to learn about them. I think so it is missing flows. Kotlin flows is missing here. So flows is again the part of asynchronous programming. And I'm also writing you know a particular topic, a particular blog on asynchronous programming. Hopefully, that will add more value to you. As hopefully, I'll write it soon. And common services, authentication, the thing. When I started my Android development journey, I actually want to give you a small advice that please do not use Firebase everywhere that you think you need require backend. You please don't use Firebase. Now, why don't you use Firebase? Because Firebase has a very weird lock-in period, which means that if you start to use Firebase, you cannot change it to anything else. And Firebase becomes very costly if somehow your app becomes big. So please do not use Firebase. If you want to practice, you can use Firebase. Firebase is a very good start to do messaging, crash analytics, Firestore authentication. These are very good things. Please use AppWrite. That's a way better service. It does not lock you in. It requires a little bit of backend experience. You will be using Docker, you will be using other services that are the part of the backend, and it will make you much more a better developer. Now, Google AdMob, Google Play Services, Google Maps. I've integrated Google Maps in Flutter and Android as well. Google AdMob, I haven't integrated Google AdMob as of yet. I'll try to integrate it, and I'm actually recording my journey as an Android developer somewhere. You will get to know about that, but that's another story. But Google AdMob is again an essential part of the monetization of any kind of app. So Google AdMob is essential. Google Maps is again essential. Many of the interviews will ask you, have you integrated Google Maps? Have you integrated Stripe payment? Have you integrated Paytm or UPI payments? There will be a very important part of your Android development journey. So please learn about them. Try to integrate it and them as a practice. So linting again. When I started as an Android developer, I got a lot of scolding because of my linting. Please uh, have a good linting. Now, if you do not understand what linting is basically making the code readable. There are many linting tools that are actually attached to your Android Studio, and they'll tell you that there is a linting error there. Please solve them. Do not ignore them. They are very essential part, because if you do not make the code readable, any future developer that comes in, that will be a it will be a terrible time for him to understand any kind of code. So linting is very essential. Debugging, you don't need to learn about these things. You can learn about Canary. You don't need to learn about Timber or anything else. There's one more thing that you need to learn about, is called baseline profiling. Now, baseline profiling is very essential because it's the part of how to improve your performance of the app. So baseline profiling is again good. There's one more thing that is missing here, is called previews. You need to learn about annotation previews as well. You can just search, you can write these topics down and you can search on YouTube, and you will learn about them. And testing, maybe you don't need to learn about testing as of yet, because whatever if you go into a company, you'll write tests. There will be TQCs there, or maybe a different testing team that will write tests for you. But if you want to learn about UI integration testing, unit testing, I've been learning about unit testing and UI testing. I'll try to do that in one of my apps as well. But they're essential parts. They are very important if you want to, and they play a very critical role in Android architecture. So again, it is an important topic, but you don't need to learn them to start out. You will have another team member that will be doing it for you. And distribution is again, how to actually distribute your app. This will go into more into the marketing side of apps. So that's just another topic for another day. But hopefully, I've given you everything about Android. If I have missed something, let me know. and I'll try to give some kind of explanation for that. So let me know your questions.
Uh, Sir, Arav in chat asks, I have a major doubt about either we should go for Flutter, which supports multi-platform, or go for native development. I think you have already covered KMM, but still, uh, if you can go in depth, like what should be our thought process for selecting a framework?
Again, I have this is my thinking at least, and what I've heard from other developers is that Flutter is used for some kind of small utility apps. Now, what? Why do I say that? Basically, I have been developing one of my apps. Right now, this app is a property auctioning app. Now, it is a big app, which means that it needs to have a lot of things. Right, property auctioning app. You can guess that it's a big app. Now, there's a part in that app called biometrics, which takes your fingerprint and face scan to actually allow that user to interact with your, auction cart. So now that we have encountered a problem that there is no good Flutter package to solve that problem. We need to do bridging, which means write iOS and native Android code and try to bridge between those two to, you know, develop a Flutter package by ourselves. And that becomes a very big problem. But for native development, that does not become a problem. So that's why native is preferred for big apps. For utility apps, you want to make an MVP. What do you mean by MVP? MVP is something, a very small app idea that you want to present to the investors. You want to collect information of the users that if this idea is actually viable for the commercial use, that is an MVP. Flutter is important for that. You don't need to develop native code for MVP. That's too much for investment and other stuff. Startups like Flutter because it's very easy to develop, it's fast to develop. But as KMM is becoming easier day by day, I think so they'll be switching to native code as they come to know how native code is much better to write as compared to Flutter. One important thing that Flutter is missing is that Flutter is becoming great, but the packages are a headache, to be honest, because you do not understand how these packages work internally. They are just dependencies in your Android. And if you're collecting these packages, if you have too much dependency on your any kind of package inside of Android, or and any kind of app, if a package deprecates, your whole app will go down, and that will be a big problem. For any kind of, there will be a war room like of situation. You need a new package from basics. So that's a problem for any kind of big company. That's why very big companies don't go Flutter, they go native. Small startup survey based companies, they always go Flutter. That's why you'll see hybrid Flutter app development jobs are more as compared to native developers are more required into a very big companies which are already established, already have big apps. They know they have a commercial viable product. So native app is for that, and that is the framework that I follow. Eventually you will need to learn both of them. It's not a choice, you will need to learn both of them because they're substitutes of each other. So yes. Any other questions, please?
Well, there are questions flooding in.
Yeah, of course.
Hemang asks, Sir, now as new learners, should we directly switch to Jetpack Compose or should we learn XML as well?
Again, XML is a part that is the part of the past. Not everybody is using XML. XML is not that great, but XML has its own advantages. XML With XML, the Android performance was really good as compared to Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose is still is in infancy. It's a new technology, and Jetpack Compose is very easy to get in. If you know Jetpack Compose, you can easily switch to Flutter and get things done. But if you know XML, then you start to go into Jetpack, then go into Flutter. It's a little difficult to get into that. But XML is a part of Android development. You will need to learn about them, because if you don't learn about them, you will not learn about Android activities, main activity, fragment activities. These are very essential parts, and many apps out there, old apps, still require them. So you need to learn about XML sooner or later. um, you can start with Jetpack. It's easy to learn. It will actually grab your curiosity, and you can easily start making UIs of the app. Sooner or later you will need to learn XML, and hopefully you will learn that on the way, on the go. You can start with Jetpack Compose as of initially.
One more thing, like if you have done React in web development, then getting into Compose is way easier for you than Excel, I think.
Yes, 100%. Because I think I don't know, I had received a comment on Twitter as well. There was this one guy talking about why are you writing React code for Android apps. I thought, why is he saying that I'm writing React code? Actually, React code is very similar to Jetpack Compose. It is very similar to, JavaScript is very similar to Kotlin and how it works, because the framework is actually, they have taken inspiration from JavaScript. So that's why uh, it looks similar, and you can switch between the two very easily if you know Kotlin. And one more thing that I wanted to talk about is one of my friends who is a backend developer has been, you know trying to understand a little bit of front end. He usually, for the first day, he came up to me and asked, why am I writing JavaScript here? I told him that it is Kotlin. Then he was astonished, like, it looks similar to JavaScript. It's exactly like JavaScript. Yeah, Kotlin is almost like JavaScript. You can switch between the two very easily. So yeah.
Sir, Agree Mas, as a beginner, I find it difficult to go through documentations. How do I develop a habit for that?
You don't need to go into the documentation as of yet. Please develop apps by watching videos, by watching others, because um, as a beginner, as I started out, I didn't understand anything the documentation said, because I didn't have the backbone knowledge that is required. You will not understand what documentation says until you have developed something, if until you have written some code. So please go out there and write some code. Watch some videos, try to copy other people how they are writing these code, and please be curious. If you have written some code, just try to understand why have you written that. Is there any other way to write the same thing differently? Is there a more efficient way to write this thing? If you're curious about that, eventually you'll be able to understand documentation. And of course, if you understand documentation, you know everything about Android. So that's a great part.
Sure, sir. I think we can move to next segment.
Yeah, sure. Now
Preet,
I
we
want to
will, yeah,
yeah.
Preet, we will cover your question in the next segment only.
um so I was talking about like this one particular thing called how to achieve a lot in 5 years, and how I plan to achieve a lot in 5 years, and what is my plan. So my plan here is, there are many things. There are many frameworks that I'm thinking. I've written many frameworks. I have this, uh, open up right here, and I have this just copy written many things right here. Right now, I'll be giving you some of the frameworks. You can take that, you can tear them apart and join them in your life, and use these framework to create something good for yourselves and others around you. Now, the one framework that I want to talk about is move to a better place with opportunities. Now, why do I ask you to move to a better place? Usually, this is a advice given by a lot of people, but they do not explain you why you need to go to a better place. Why can't we create a better place right here? So the problem here is you're the average of the five people you're around with. So if you just, for example, let me give you an example. If you started freelancing right now, right? You started freelancing. You started taking, Android development projects. You got the projects. Congratulations, you have got the project. You have got some new projects, and you started development, and you get good at the development eventually, and you release the apps, and they're doing okayish. Now what happens here is you are the only one in your team that is developing, or maybe there's one more friend around you that is trying to develop. Both of you guys will have the same knowledge. You will not gain new knowledge. Internet is the only source of new knowledge. So you'll be trapped in one particular section. You will not be able to learn more. The only way to learn more is to find something uncomfortable. Go out of your house, go into somewhere in Bangalore maybe, or wherever, or maybe out of India, wherever you want to go there, and try to go into the places, go into a community where you think people exist who you want to be like. maybe a small Mark Zuckerberg is there who wants to build his Facebook. You want to be with him, right? That's why you need to go to a different place. You need to go to a different city. You need to go to a different country. You need to move out of your house. And that's exactly the plan that I will follow. I was thinking about my masters as well. So I plan to move out of my house to go and explore different opportunities and find different people. Twitter is again a great place to find new people. And but again, Twitter, social media, all of these are echo chambers. You will get lost in there if you're too deluded. um, but yes, go and move out if you think go and move out of your house, do something uncomfortable and build things. That's how you grow. So the second point that I want to discuss will be the part, a subsection of this thing, moving out, will be to get a second citizenship. Now, why do I talk about second citizenship? Now, as you know, there's a war going on between Israel and Gaza. There's a war going on between Russia and Ukraine. There are many wars going on, right? India is not a very safe country. It's a neutral country. Of course, there'll not be wars in like 10 years from now, but you never know. We never expected the Russia and Ukraine war. We never expected Gaza and Israel war, but it happened. So can happen for India as well. You can go against Pakistan, you can go against China someday. And what happens here is, if war breaks out, economy will go in the downturn. And if the economy goes in down, you will start to lose your job. People around you will start to panic, and everything around you will start to break down. What is your hedge against that particular situation? The only hedge you have is second citizenship. You need to move out of your country into a place which is much more peaceful till the time your country becomes peaceful. So second citizenship is your hedge against war. And there are many people who are on Twitter, who are on LinkedIn, who have posted that the Russia-Ukraine war, the Russians. And what happens is, when the war breaks out, people start to hate you because you are a Russian. And what happens is, you don't get any job opportunities in USA, UK, or any other country because you're Russian. And Russia's economy is already in the downturn. People are wasting money on the war, so you don't have any money for the people. They will lose their jobs, they will lose their things. And eventually you need to protect your family, eventually you need to protect your friends. The only way to protect them against the war, a big thing like war, is to have a second citizenship. So do consider that. It's a very big plan. It's a new thing that I'm introducing to you guys. Of course, it's not a part of second year development journey, but it's something that I want you to keep in mind, because no one will tell you that you need a second citizenship. It's most of the people think it's delusion, but it is the truth. So this is the thing. And the third part that I want to introduce is join a community. You already are part of community, like this Google Clippers Club. You're already a part of it. Find another community, a bigger community. Go to conferences. Go to these big meetups. Sorry, big meetups. And when you go to these big meetups, you'll be in a very uncomfortable position. You'll meet new people. These handsome chads or beautiful girls out there who are developers, and you will meet them and eventually learn a lot from them, in a way of socializing, in a way of learning from them, because they're better developers than you, and they're a very big part of you. So these are the plans that I am thinking about for a little bit of social plans. And one more thing that I want to introduce is, this is like a basic profit thing, like your salary thing, how to earn a lot kind of thing. As I've already introduced you to the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, right? This guy. So Almanac of Naval Ravikant, there's one thing called leverage in this, that is argued by Naval Ravikant. Now, what do you mean by leverage? Now he says, there's a quote from Archimedes that, give me a liver long enough and I'll pick up the whole world. So you need to have a leverage of some kind to gain a lot of money. And what do you mean by leverage? Leverage means that, let me give you an example. Shah Rukh Khan. You cannot be Shah Rukh Khan. Shah Rukh Khan is famous because he is him. Ritik Roshan, he is him. Johnny Depp, he is him. That's why he is famous. That's their leverage. You are your own leverage. So be like you, develop yourself into the sharpest being possible, and turn the world around you, and you will have the greatest leverage possible. That's how you develop leverage. Now there are many things about leverage. You can read this book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. You can find it on Amazon and things. You read a lot about leverage. About Go on Twitter, you can find Naval Ravikant there. He has posted a thread already, how to get rich and stuff. And one more topic that I wanted to introduce. This was the book called. Let me give it to my bookshelf here. This book is called The 4 Hour Work Week. Again, this is another important book that you need to read. So this book introduces a topic that your salary is the function of your time. Now let me repeat that. Your salary is the function of your time, which means that whatever job you do, right? If you go in a company and you're doing a job, you put 9 to 5 there. Your salary is equal to the amount of time you put in. If you go early, they will cut your salary. So your salary is the function of time. If you are able to displace the time out of that equation, make your money free of time, you've already double tripled in money. That's how exactly you become rich. So um, that's how I plan to do things. Freelancing is a very important part of it. For example, let me give you another example of freelancing. Right now, what freelancing provides you is basically freedom. Now, what do I mean by freedom? What do I mean by leverage? Basically, you can hire someone down below you, another developer. You can teach them development, and they will do the work for you. Now you have freed the time and money. They will earn for you, and that's how the equation of time and money has been broken. And that's how you gain money. That's how any investor gains money. So equation of function, the function of salary and time is the only equation that is developed around your business. So these are some of my plans. There are many more. I'll try to break them down in Twitter somewhere. There are many more. I won't be going down that rabbit hole. But that is it for now, and hopefully you've understood some of the things. You can grab these frameworks, you can break them down, you can apply them, and think of strategies to apply them as well. Are there any questions? Let me know about this plan or anything else.
No, sure, sir. These are some great plans. Sir, I wanted to ask, like you touched upon networking and going to like cons and conferences. So I know there are many participants here who are like as introverted as me, who are like too afraid to get out of my comfort zone and get to know new people. So I want to ask you, like, how do you plan that out? How do you plan that aspect of your meeting with new people and networking?
I'll tell you one thing that I've been studying a little bit of psychology as well, right? I've been a part of a psychology group and thing. So I have studied extroversion and introversion as well. There's nothing like introversion in this entire world. It's just a habit of being things, right? Now, introversion is basically a thing that you feel comfortable by not talking to others, and introversion is basically explaining that I feel charged by not talking to others. So what happens here is people do not talk. Be they are by themselves doing their own thing, minding their own business, and they do not care about people around them. And what happens here is they get into a little bubble of themselves and packed there until that bubble bursts open, and to start to explore something to you out there, meet other people. You need to burst that bubble. You don't need to that particular bubble in your own brain, in your own head, trying to um, develop some ideas. You need to go out there, meet new people. Meeting new people is the easiest way to boost your health. So that's the thing. And introversion, if you're an introvert and if you want to go to development communities, take your friends there. Friends are friends. You can talk to them. Why do you think, one more thing I want to ask, if you're an introvert, why can a human talk to friends even if they are introvert? It doesn't make sense, right? By definition, if you're an introvert, I cannot talk to anyone. No, you're not an introvert. You are just there because it's your habit of doing things. You can have a tendency to look between, you can be an ambivert as well. You can do both, be an introvert and extrovert at the same time. I'm an ambivert. And an easy way to go from introvert to an extrovert is basically look at the other side of the scale. Example is, this is the scale of extrovert, this is the ultimate extrovert, this is the ultimate introvert. You're somewhere right here. And what you do is look towards the ultimate extroverts, and you get some of the points from ultimate extrovert until you get to right here in the scale. That's how you become go from an introvert to an extrovert. And you can shuffle between the two whenever you want. It's a habit, it's a practice that comes into play. That's how the things work. And as of now, if you want to go into, communities, take your friends there, talk. You go there, you're boys, you can, maybe you're a group of girls, you can go there and talk to just one person. If you can talk to one person, okay, hi, I wanted to talk about this thing, this new technology looks interesting, can you tell me about this particular thing, can you help me in this particular, I was trying to build this project, I was totally confused, can you help me out in that way. They'll be glad to help you out. People love helping out, they feel great at helping out. So people will love to help you out. And just go and ask for help. That's the easiest way to
Uh,
get into
yeah,
conversations.
guys, do this in college also. Do ask your seniors about the project that they have built and the things that they are working on and the things that you find difficulties on. We are always ready to help you guys.
100%.
So there is Preet who asks, as we are aware the rapid updates in Android, how can we keep up with the introduction of new features?
So Android development is a changing field. App development as a whole is a changing field. There are many things that come up in, Android development. Then many new libraries that get deprecated in within a few seconds, within a few days. So you need to be updated all the time. How you can do that is basically be on Twitter, be on social medias. If you cannot be there, read blogs. Go on Medium or read different blogs. You can take the Medium, subscription if you want to. If you don't want to, it's all right. You have many articles there. Read all of these blogs, and you can read different newsletters as well. There's one app called Substack. It has many newsletters. I read many of them. I was reading it today as well. So you can read one newsletter at a time, and you will be able to get knowledge about new things. And there are many newsletters on Medium as well, which will talk to you about, Android development, new things in Android. There's one newsletter called Now in Android, which is actually developed by the Android team itself. You can do that. You can also watch podcasts, different YouTube. You can watch Philip Lackner, what is happening in the new field. He will always produce a new video. You can talk. You can follow other app developers. They'll always talk about something. So it's easy to get noted. It's hard to get into practice of developing. Please practice developing. Do not delude into yourself ki I learned this thing because I read an article. If you haven't applied it in code, you haven't learned anything. You need to read the code and apply it. That's how you learn. That's how you need to go forward.
And Preet, do follow Hitesh sir also. He also posts
Eh,
great stuff on Twitter.
you can do you can if you find it valuable, you can follow me. If you, yeah, whatever you want.
Sir, Ishan is asking, will doing internship now help me during my hiring for an Android role? Well, let me rephrase that. How do I find an internship that will help me during my hiring process?
Yeah, perfect. The thing is, like, if you're in first and second year, I would suggest that I would s- I would take a like total different approach here. If you are going for an internship, go for them. Good, it's very good practice. Apply for the internships, and you are an intern. You're not a very big asset to the company. They'll take you anyway. Okay, they want some kind of small developers to be in the team to do the, you know chores and do the things that major developers don't, you know and with the what happens here is you get to know a lot of developers around you, and this actually helps you develop a new sense around you. Like, for example, if there's a senior developer just sitting right beside you, if you ask him how to do this, he will tell you new a different way that will not be available on the internet. And that's how you grow as a person. That's why um, internships are very good. And What happens there is you can also do with internships, you can do also, freelance. Freelance will teach you many things, like for example sales, how to do sales, how to actually talk to a lot of different people, how to do cold approaches. And cold approach is of course very essential to do anything in your life. So do cold approaches, how to do cold email, how to do cold messaging. This is a very important part of your life. I didn't learn about freelancing till now. That's a very big part that I want to learn more about. So please learn about sales, please learn about these small things, and keep on learning, keep on doing your code. Have a set time for your code, have a set time for these new subjects like sales, cold emailing, cold mailing, cold messaging, and go on your internships. You will eventually become a very great developer, or maybe start your own startup somewhere down the line, because you already have the sale skills of sales, um, coding, and cold approaching. You have all three. You can find a VC and invest in your app if you want to, but you need to learn all of these things over time. And internships, freelancing, you can do both, or maybe juggle something. Maybe do once freelancing, go on to internships. And as of how do you find internships is, you can start to develop skill, start to build something online, make your app open source, and start to post on Twitter, start to post on I don't think so YouTube would be a very big thing to post, because it requires a lot of time and editing. If you can post on YouTube, go forward. Please post on LinkedIn. You need to post on LinkedIn. If you don't post on Twitter, it's okay. Please post on LinkedIn, and post something once in a while, maybe 2 3 posts about your thing, what you're doing, maybe coding something. Please post there, because it will actually, first of all, keep you accountable. Second, people will notice you. So that's a very great part. And then you can eventually, if you're accountable enough, you will go into learning 6 months 7 months of Android development. You'll find a good internship, and from that internship you can move forward, as I've given you already the plans and frameworks. So yes.
Yeah, sir. Agrim asks, how can we enhance our collaborative skills and contribute to community-driven projects?
Community driven, you mean open
Yeah,
source, right?
yeah. I think he
So
means.
So I think so. Your seniors have much more knowledge about open source, because they were talking about they have been contributing to open source as well. You can talk to Pranjal and Priyanshu for that. They'll be your guidance for open source. Open source depends upon one important skill that I want you to develop is actually go onto different open sources, like whatever library you use. For example, maybe Dagger or something that's open source, maybe Coil, right? The image loading library. Go out there and see how are they structuring the app, understand and try to replicate that process in your own app. And once you try to replicate and understand those sources, try to understand somebody else's code, that's how you grow as a developer. Because you'll never encounter a problem that you need to, until unless you're doing a startup or you're in a service based company, you will not be starting from the scratch. You will eventually be working on someone else's code. So you need the ability to learn from someone else's code. Open source is the best way to learn that. Find different communities, or maybe find different open source things that are Kotlin based, maybe Java based if you're doing Java, or whatever you're doing, web development, app development, game development, whatever you're doing. Find these open sources things, find how they're structuring the app, understand why are they writing this code this way. That's how you grow, and you will eventually be able to understand the whole open source, um, like over time.
Sure, sir. I think we can move on to the next part.
Now for the second part, that the fourth fifth part, I think the fourth part, yeah, practice app development. Now I always preach about practicing app development, as app development is not about theory, right? I also made a mistake of thinking that app development is about theory. It's not about theory. App development is about coding. If you come I come from a job every day, right? I get to my desk and I start coding for at least 1 hour, or maybe I have a study session scheduled. I start to learn Flutter for 1 hour. I do some kind of coding, some kind of development, and it actually feels good that I did something today. And that's how you practice app development. I don't have the time for like 8 hours of coding. You guys do. You are in second year, first year. That's a very big advantage. Remember this. If um, if you are being paid to study, that's one of the biggest advantages in this world. So you have the advantage of time. You have a very big hedge against me, people like me, who started android development after passing out. You guys need to um, get your head down there, do 8 6 hours of development if you want to. Okay, again, if you want to. If this doesn't interest you, nothing will. You will um, have to switch into something else. Hopefully first and second year is something that is a part of your exploration, and you'll figure something out. For practicing app development, I will say that please code a lot. When I first started as a web developer. um, Before becoming an app developer, I used to code in HTML, CSS, and JS. I didn't go into React as much. I thought that uh, JS is enough to get an internship, which I was wrong. And the thing is, HTML, CSS, JavaScript gave me a very big head start for understanding other development fields, and other particular how programming is actually done. Now, web development requires, you know, it does not require a lot of consideration of, for example, Android has a life cycle. Now this life cycle is not available in web. We don't need to consider if the battery of your phone is dying or not, if the memory is actually filled or not. We don't need to care about. There is no biometric in web development. There's just UI that looks good, that functions well. That's what web development is. But in Android, there's so many things that you need to keep in mind. There's so many parts that you need to keep in mind. And the thing is, there's a backend for Android as well. There is no backend for web. There is just front end and how the design works for front end. And practicing app development, you need to be coding a lot. Web development, you might not code a lot in there, but app development, you need to code a lot to understand what is actually happening. And one advice is just be curious enough. Please be curious enough, that if you see some kind of code, maybe in chat gpt, if you ask something and this chat gpt something answer, or maybe something from stack overflow, please question why have they written this particular code this way. Is there any other way to solve that? And s- try to break it down step by step into small things, and try to understand why are they using this thing, and go into the rabbit hole of that particular topic, so that you don't need to explore that topic again ever. Okay. And one more easiest way to learn and practice app development is to showcase your work. Open source your project, start posting on LinkedIn or Twitter, or maybe YouTube if you want to. And b- don't post every day. That's just a headache, to be honest. Post once in a while, or maybe post 2 posts in a week, and showcase what you have done throughout the week. That's how you practice app development. Okay. And this is how I practice app development. Let me know if you have any other questions.
So there's a very important question that actually I also struggled with when I was in my second year. Shreyans asks, can you share your thought on time management, doing Android, academics, and other things simultaneously? Sometimes everything gets messed up. So any strategy for time management?
One important thing that I want to share about time management is that eventually you'll never be able to manage your time. Being very honest, you're just a monkey with a plan. So you'll never be able to be 100% accountable. The only thing that you can do is set a time. Like if you have Saturday, Sundays, you're free on Saturday, Sunday, pick a time and please do development. Have a time there. Do not destroy yourselves like if you just came from college and you start developing or writing code like a monkey. Please don't do that. You need to have a very good headspace to actually do the cognitive work that programming requires. So please do 1 hour, maybe do half an hour daily. Do something daily. Don't leave the habit of coding. do a little bit daily, and that's all you got to do. You don't need to do 8 hours on a run or do a marathon or a hackathon. You don't need to do that until it's a holiday. If it's a holiday, you can do that. You can eventually figure out, I need to do 16 hours of coding this week, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe there's a Thursday week that's free, or maybe I'm not going to college on Thursday today, I'll be coding whole day. So this is what I'm thinking. And one more thing that I want to make you aware of is that you are the average of the 5 people you stay with. If your friends are going around messing around, you know, not to say anything bad about them, but going to party clubs and stuff, not saying those things are bad, but if you're eventually doing them a lot, there's a balance to everything. If you're doing out of control, you'll eventually figure out that you are just not a good leper. You just might know theory about them because you've read them. You're not a good leper because you cannot apply what you have read. And eventually programmer is something that can actually translate their thoughts into code. So that's what a programmer is. So you need to practice. And for time management, please have a particular justifiable time that you can do practice in, and do that. Please focus on your academics, because I think so you're learning CS. If you want to be an Android developer, I hope you're learning coding and something. If you're learning something else, I don't think so you need to focus on that if you want to be a developer. Like, if I would be I'm an electrical engineer, I didn't much focus on electrical. I loved electronics, but I didn't like dynamos and stuff, or transformers. I liked electronics, I was good at electronics. And somehow that part also shows in Android development. That's why I didn't focus much on electrical. I passed in electrical. Um, and I was good at electronics, I was good at development. That's how I gained knowledge about around that. That's how you need to manage, weigh down things, weigh down your priorities, and weigh down your things, and do your time management.
Sure. So there are many students here who want to have a good career in mobile development, and Yash is asking, like, what are the most important topic that one should be prepared for while looking for interview for internships or these jobs which revolve around mobile development.
I actually introduced you. Hopefully, you've seen the roadmap, and you might have
Yes.
also the link. And you need to know the basic foundations of these things. And I've already shared all of the things from a roadmap that are the basic foundations. I try to share my things that I think in, like, my interview experience. Like, if some kind of interviewer gave me some hard love and told me that this thing, you need to improve this thing, this thing is bad, I try to share on Twitter. And the many app developers sharing um, their tweets, their learnings on Twitter. You can learn from them. You can learn from Medium. Medium is a great place to learn from developers. YouTube is again a great place to learn from developers. So just have the foundations ready. Like, if you want me to uh, list down everything, I won't be able to, because the many things that an app developer requires, and you will start to learn them eventually. But for now, just learn the foundations of app development. For example, be good at Kotlin, understand what are activities. You don't need to learn about architecture as of yet. Start with the basic foundations of Jetpack Compose, how to actually make the UIs, how to actually manage UIs. Take a good course on Android development somewhere in Udemy, maybe. Do not spend a lot of money as of yet as a beginner. Start, and if you want a good course, what you want to do is start freelancing, get a project, get money from that project, buy a good course, and start developing. That's how you buy a course. Do not spend too much of your dad's or mom's money on courses.
That's a
um,
great advice. Great
yeah,
advice.
please generate assets before buying anything. That's how you deal with life, please. And that's how you do that. And if you want to learn, there are many free sources on YouTube. um, Learn from Philip Lackner, learn from other people who are developing already. Please develop the foundations that are the essential parts. You don't need to learn anything else as of yet. And once you start to develop one or two apps, maybe a notes app with CRUD application in Firebase, now that's a good starting point for any developer. Start to integrate AI into your app, maybe Gemini API call somewhere, right? And if you can do that, that's a very good foundation, and you'll be able to land some kind of internship for that. Afterwards, you get to know a lot about architecture, design patterns, mobile system design. Then so many things that you need to learn. You'll eventually learn them, or you'll eventually stumble upon them and learn them. That's how any app developer learns. That's it.
Sir, one more question from Prathamesh. He asked how to optimize performance and avoid crashes. Let me again rephrase this question. How to write the most error-free or bug-free code that you can write in Android?
So, like the for bug-free code, again, it comes to this comes to, you know, this part is the part of mobile system design, and this part is the part of, you know, the
Architectures.
architectures. MVVM, MVI. Why do you need to use one particular architecture as compared to others? So, mobile system design, I have already written a lot on that. You can find my blogs. I don't think this will be a 2 or 3 hour session or me explaining mobile system design. You can find them. There are 2 to 3 YouTube videos as well. I think so. Gaurav Sen has done one video on mobile system design. You can find that as well. For architectures, um, architecture, there are many great videos on architecture, and eventually you will get the hang of architecture by development itself. You cannot look at it and think, yeah, I know architecture. You will never be able to learn architecture this way. The only way to learn about architecture is by applying architecture. So, um, when it comes to app performance and things like why how this write a cleaner code, you need to practice clean architecture. There are many books. There's an Uncle Bob blog as well on clean architecture. You can find that the person who invented clean architecture, you can find his blog as well on internet, and you can learn more about that. That's a better way to do app performance and write much cleaner code. um Other than that, I think the architecture is one of the greatest point and one of the most best points that defines how our code is clean. Another thing is just linting. Please lint your errors. So
Hmm.
that's it.
Sir, speaking of architecture, Aditya asked, Sir, what is your opinion on MVVM? Is it a one size fits all kind of architecture? So far, I have only worked on apps with MVVM architecture.
Again, this is a very important question actually. Many
Yeah.
interviewers will ask you, why do you use MVVM? Why don't we use MVI, MVP, maybe Viper? You maybe using some kind of other state management library. In maybe in Flutter you use Block. Why do you use Block as compared to Riverpod or GetX? Why you are using them? So they will always ask you something like that. And MVVM is not one size fits all, because MVVM is used majorly in a very large scale app. Not a very large scale, actually a large scale. A very large scale would be another layer on a component based MVVM would
Yeah,
be
clean
an approach.
architecture.
Yeah, clean architecture plus component based MVVM approach would be a very big app like Netflix or something. And um, MVVM is something that's a very good practice to follow, because Google actually says, please follow MVVM, don't follow MVI, MVC. They're not that great. Please follow MVVM. That's why MVVM is used in most of the apps. You need to learn a little bit about MVI. You don't need to practice them until unless you need to apply them. MVP, MVI, and these are architectures are used for very small scale apps. For example, a Notes app, um, very small scale apps that do some kind of utility. You need to show some kind of value on just one screen. It's a 2 screen, 3 screen app. MVI, MVC is good. You don't need to do MVVM. You don't need to make use cases, interfaces. You don't need to write test cases. You might need to write test cases dependently, but um, you don't need to use MVVM there. And this is the part of very important practice, because many beginners, what they try to do is overcomplicate the code. And overcomplication is one of the biggest signs that show that an developer is actually not that great. So try to simplify that code, try to follow the architecture that is actually needed. And you don't actually need to plan out the architecture, because your senior engineer will be planning it out. For example, they'll be planning out many things in mobile system. It will be a part product design decision, part app development decision, and he will be giving you the architecture plan. You don't you wouldn't be able to, you know, um, design the architecture you want in. That'll be the part of a senior engineer, a tech lead will do that. What you will do is follow that architecture. So you need to learn, you can learn about MVC, MVI, MVP from blogs. You don't need to apply them. If you want to apply them, apply them. Make a notes app from MVP, make a notes app again in MVVM, and see how architectures differ. And that's a very great practice. Do let me know if you do that. And yes, and that's how MVVM is not a one size fits all.
I actually agree with you that MVVM is not one size fit all. I have worked with MVIs and found that MVVM usually handles the states and all very well than
Yes,
MVIs.
100%. It depends upon the app developer to app developer what they
Yeah,
prefer, and what is the use case of the app.
yeah,
100% MVI is also great.
yeah. I think we can move on to the next segment.
So, the last segment that I want to introduce is AI versus programming and some real engineering. And as I've told you before, and as I started learning about, I told you about IDEs, right? How these compilers will be the new thing. How, Apple Vision Pro will be the new thing, the new toy in the market that will penetrate the experimental layer into the commercial and the daily use layer. So AI is the new experimental toy that has been around for a while, in 5 to 6 years. For a while, for 5 6 years, we haven't seen them because we haven't seen it as overhyped, because it was actually locked into a bubble somewhere around in Twitter, and it got out when ChatGPT came out and other AI models came out. So AI is the new thing, and it is here to stay. You cannot displace it. And what AI and programmers will do is, basically, AI will start to replace small programmers who do not understand what the heck they are doing. And AI will eventually displace the, you know programmers who are just copy pasting code from Stack Overflow without applying any kind of, without architecting anything, without understanding why this code works this way. Like, there were many people on Twitter who I wrote a thread around Kotlin coroutines, and there was this one guy. I don't remember his name. I won't be taking his name. He told me, why do you need to understand Kotlin coroutines? This is the basis of anything. You need to understand why you write that code, because AI will displace you, because it can write the code. It can write the code, but it does not understand what code works where. It's your responsibility to make it work. um, and what will happen is, basically, let me give you an example of designers. A designer has much more better knowledge than I do about designs. I know that I can have AI generated photos, AI generated UI designs developed, but they are not that great. They will never be able to displace what a UI designer designs. Why? Because UI designer actually thinks how the customer thinks. He knows exactly the psychology of a customer. The AI does not understand that. It does not have the longevity and the basis, the background, the experience UI designer does. Now, what happens here is, the designer actually uses AI to generate these designs, modifies them according to the need of the customer, and gives that to the programmer. Programmer uses a code that is generated by AI and modifies that code and plugs it in, and develop products around that. What happens here is the development speed becomes 10x, the 100x over time. And now the 20 million code line that you need to write is developed within a few months instead of 2 years. So the development is faster, new products can be shipped faster, which means something great for the economy. And what happens here is, if you're really scared about, if you're just a developer out there who is thinking that, you know you're an app developer, and you're thinking about app development, you do not understand the code as of yet. What you need to do is, if you want to stay in app development, you need to understand why your code works. And secondly, if you don't want to stay in app development, I will say that go one level higher somewhere. For example, go into backend, or maybe go into compiler engineering. how does computer communicate from your IDE to your screen. How does he do that? There's a C++ code written behind compilers. There's a runtime code written behind there somewhere down the line. And this code is very essential, because in the past few days, what has happened is, past few years, what has happened is, in 1995, 1998, 1990s, people like Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Bill Gates developed these OS systems and bought these OS systems like Android. And these were the people who actually engineered things from the basis. And what it enabled was the new startups, new phase of startups were websites, apps. These were the new startups that were a layer above from the foundation of C, C++, of that was established in 1990s. What is actually happening here is AI is actually again diminishing the layer that is established above the compilers, the foundations that were established in 1990s. We are going back to the age of 1990s, where we are actually trying to develop something so foundational, um, and related close to the hardware. So that's the new thing that will be around for a while. If you want to explore that part, you will eventually need to explore that part. Me and you both will explore that part. So that's how AI and programming is real, playing out, and that's how real engineering is coming into play. That's it.
Hitesh, what do you think about like the concept of code architecting and writing the code itself? I mean, what differentiates like someone like yourself who is experienced in the mobile development environment and someone who is just experienced in GPT? Like you and he both can write any code that may satisfy the use case. But how do you think the architecting part of the code helps you get the better of him?
What happens here is the chat GPT do not understand what's your use case until unless the AGI comes around, right?
Yeah.
Eventually that will be the displacement of us all. Hopefully the human race survives by the time AGI is there.
Mm.
Until that, the chat GPT or any kind of AI model does not understand your use case, your customer. There was this blog by a UX designer. Now he argued that this one person said on this one great designer, a design lead at actually Netflix or something, a very big company, and he argued that we can actually use ChatGPT or AI models to get how the users will react to their products. Eventually they don't need to do any kind of you know surveys or anything. Without doing surveys, they will ask the ChatGPT, how what do you think of this product, and they will get the response. But they forget this thing is the argument here is the ChatGPT will actually eventually try to produce or persuade some kind of argument that looks like real but it isn't real. So what happens here is that it develops a certain kind of because it's just a tree, it's if else statements going around, and it doesn't understand what it actually means to be the user. It eventually understands what the internet has to say. So it might hallucinate and give you something, and totally misdirect your product in somewhere that the user does not want. So it is a great part of our development field. It will be able to produce reusable code snippets that were found in Stack Overflow can be found in ChatGPT now. And what happens with architecture is uh, it does not understand its use case. It does not understand what the user wants. It does not understand. It might hallucinate and give you something that looks real, but it isn't real. So um, this is how the chat gpt and any AI model will come into play. One important question that comes into mind again is what happens here is if chat gpt or these AI models are big LLM models, right? They do not have the computation power of executing everything in this entire world, because that's too much for anything, any kind of computer programmer or program or any kind of computer. It's very hard to execute that kind of thing. So what happens is people start to develop a very small LLMs for a very specific use case. For example, translating React Figma designs to code. That's just one small use case, and there's a startup around that. That will actually be a plugin in your Figma, and it will eventually make your UI code into Jetpack Compose, and it will only do Jetpack Compose, nothing else. It will actually give you a good code, not just a random containers boxes out of the blue. It will actually give you a good code, and eventually learn from you that how do you architect your app. It might still hallucinate. That's why we require developers. It might still make bad decisions. So, and that's the thing how AI will part out. And in development, that's what I think. At least I'm not a god in development, but that's what I think. At least you can find other people who are very big on AI and stuff. So yeah, please be aware of things. Go on Twitter, find this thing. Don't delude yourself. Keep practicing and go a level higher if you want to not be displaced by, you know, ChatGPT or any kind of thing. Please go a level higher. Go into backend over time. Go into compilers over time. Go into hardware. Learn electronics. You will eventually be going into a field that is not displaceable that easily by AI. So that's the thing.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. Sir, Aditya asked a question which is not related to AI, but given
Yeah.
limited system constraint, what should be our focus on? UI or functionality? As a developer, functionality is what I'll prefer, but should you compromise some functionality to make the UI more visually appealing?
The question, if I understand it right, was that you are thinking towards UI as compared to functionality, right? And you're comparing UI and functionality,
Like he's asking,
and
is
you're
there a
focusing.
trade-off between making the UI more attractive and appealing and adding more features and more cases to your applications?
Yes, 100% there's a trade-off. This comes under mobile system design. This is an argument that I learned, and I think so. This is think at least. I'll try to give more, try to collect more examples of this thing and try to update my blogs. What happens here is, let me give you an example of Instagram. Right now, this Instagram is actually a very generalized app. What happens here is the whole idea of Instagram is share what you want on social media, right? Share your photos, share your reels, share your whatever you want on social media, share yourselves to social media. The whole use case of your app will be defined by one single thing: your photos, reels, stuff. And the features of this app are just around that particular uh, you know one particular use case. So the more generalized your app becomes, the more number of people who are using your app, um, the use case of the app becomes smaller. And if less people are using your app, but they're into one particular industry, what happens here is the features of your app will increase, the use cases of your app will increase. Let me give you an example again. For example, if you're developing some kind of inventory management system app, right? There's a backend somewhere, you update the admin somewhere down the line, like update Ashirwad atta 5 kilos has been added to this particular inventory section. What happens is the app will also show that particular inventory section, right? Ashirwad atta 5 kilos has been added to this particular inventory section. Now what happens here is that it might have many functionalities. Like it not only shows inventory, but it also sorts it. It might just show other things, like electronic sections, maybe do different sections of inventory. For example, it might download the invoices of everything, and those invoices can only be accessed by, the supervisors. It cannot be accessed by small employees. The many things, employees may be a part of this app as well. So the use case grows, the smaller the market grows, the smaller the use case. That's how the app
Hmm.
development works.
Yeah, great point. Sir, one more question. Agreem, this question actually bugs me a lot also. Like, is taking help of AI, like ChatGPT and stuff, and optimizing my code is a bad practice as a developer for me?
See, what happens with AI is it will give you a very generalized code, right?
Yeah,
And it will, if you're not using ChatGPT 4 or the latest and the version of AI, what will
yeah,
happen is you're using the older version. It will give you the older code, right? And it might not play out the way you want to. So ChatGPT 4 might give you an optimized code, might give you an optimized code. Again, it's up to the use case, what you are doing. You can also, like, if you have written something, you find this thing can be optimized better, ask the chat gpt to optimize it. If the chat gpt actually optimize it, use it. But if you think that I have optimized it much better than chat gpt will, I will just write the code by myself. You don't need to create functions again and again to do the same thing. You can just write the code manually. That's how you think through you know AI optimization.
but sir, don't you think that using ChatGPT regularly, I know it increases my speed like 10x or something, but it also makes me feel like, yeah, it's not a code that I have written. You know
No,
that feeling.
there's a thing called I don't what is this habit called? I have no idea. But what happens is a lot of developer, like when I started out, what I used to do was go on Stack Overflow, and if I think this question it has been answered right, copy and paste the code into my development field. What
Yeah,
happens is I have not written that code. I do not understand why this code is correct. Right? I
yeah.
just saw it. I thought it is right, and I just pasted it. It might completely destroy the app. It might cause memory leaks. I do not know. It requires context from a view model, and it's getting a context into a Jetpack Compose screen, and it's causing memory leaks and app crashes, worst performance because of that one particular code. So you need to understand, you need to be very careful while copying any code from, even if you've written your own code, manually written it, and you're still copying it to another file inside of a project. It might lead to failures because you've just copied another code. Copying, uh, if you do not understand it completely, it will do something bad or the other, outperform, or maybe do something weird in your app and give you some kind of weird errors, and you will never know because you've never told your brain that I've written this code as well. You just copied that. So that's a very bad practice.
So I
And I
think
think
like
he would also like to know about this thing called Copilot, which was newly introduced. Android Studio also has a plugin for it. I have
Yes.
known some juniors who just have enabled Copilot in their IDEs and rely on their automatic completion. Uh,
Hitesh,
so
don't
Automatic
you think
completion. Yeah.
what do you think about that?
autocomplete the Copilot which autocomplete? It is. Don't you think that it's all about confidence? Like if you know the code that any AI has provided you, if you know that yes, it suits my requirements, it will not cause a bug or error, it will not cause any crashes. Yes, I will use that. But to reach that level of understanding, you have to first make at least try to implement that code yourself.
100%. You need to be able to write the code, because if you do not write the code, again, this comes to the part of practicing, because you will be able to write UI codes eventually somewhere down the line. You will be able to write um, stuff with the help of AI down the line. But you will need to understand why it has written this code, because is there, if you do not understand that code, there might be an efficient way to write that code, and you will not know how to do that. I'll give you an example as well. I was working on my app, a Niva app, right now. There's a thing.
Yes.
um, Now what happened here was I was making an enemy AI, right? Now this is a card game, right? Now the user plays a card, the enemy AI should also play a card. Now I was thinking, how can I make the enemy AI programmable so that if he sees this value of the card, please play this card, other than those, like three cards, play this card instead of others two. So how can I make this? Now this use case isn't I tried ChatGPT, it didn't give me the answer. It gave me very weird answers. I have the snippets and it didn't work. Why? Because I do not understand the code that it has given me. I tried to explore more on that. I had some, went on YouTube, get some MIT lectures on AI stuff, not very deep, just algorithms. If you want to learn more about this particular section, you can learn about Monte Carlo tree search and Minimax algorithms. These are very amazing algorithms to make small games like tic tac toe. Chess is actually made from chess AI is actually made from Monte Carlo tree search. It's a
Yes.
very complex algorithm. So yes, you can learn about them. And what I tried to do is make a tree in Kotlin. I do not know how to make a tree. I did not know that. I asked ChatGPT. It gave me a very deluded answer. I had no idea how to do that. I went into the website again, Kotlin website, understood how to make a tree, then came back, coded it by myself, and it was everything by myself. ChatGPT will not give you the use case because it doesn't know what the heck I was talking about. How do I describe this to ChatGPT that if I have 15 5, 10 5, 18 5, these cards, and if user plays this card, please play this card. How can I write this algorithm? How can I actually tell this to GPT? It's very difficult to prompt this way. The only way you can do that is write some code, play around a little bit. If you do not understand that code, ask ChatGPT, please modify this particular section of the code. Then you will be able to understand what is going wrong, right? Instead of writing the whole code in ChatGPT, you won't be able to understand what is going on at all. And in the use cases, in big use cases, I was talking about Niva, right? This was a different app altogether. I don't think so. There's a card game in Jetpack Compose there out there in Play Store. What happens is it's a very unique idea, and you cannot find this use case anywhere else. AI doesn't know how to use it because it's a very new use case. So that's the problem with AI. And yeah, don't just write code out of the blue from AI. Understand what you're writing, please,
Hmm.
because if you don't, you won't be able to be a good programmer at all.
Sure,
That's how
sure.
things work.
Understanding is the key here. Sir, again,
100%.
coming back to Java v Kotlin, Aditya wants to ask, I use Kotlin, but most of Android open source program itself is in Java. So isn't Java perhaps still a better fit with regards to Android development?
A lot of like many open source depends. Like I think so many open source programs are actually written in Java, but if you look at the statistics of apps, they are many of them, like around 80% of them are written in Kotlin. They might not be open source, they are written in Kotlin. You will eventually need to learn Java. Why? Because there are many things in Java, because Java is the baseline of Kotlin. Java Kotlin uses Java on the back end. Java is the baseline, and Kotlin is the layer above there. That's how Kotlin was programmed. It They took synthesis from JavaScript and Java to understand how to develop a really good language that is declarative in nature and stuff. So that's how Kotlin came to be. You will eventually need to learn some kind of Java because you will eventually arrive at an app that uses Java. And if you do not, if you're completely blank on Java, that's a bad use case. Then you will eventually need to learn it. If you're just a Kotlin programmer, please focus on Kotlin first. Don't hop on three different languages, try to like do three different use. Please do one thing, and please develop some apps, do something. There are many Kotlin based apps as well, like for example Coil is the image loading library. It's written in Kotlin. It uses in Kotlin coroutines as well. You can try to do open source contribution there, and your seniors are doing open source contribution. You can ask them for Kotlin and stuff. um, so
Hmm.
Java is essential, but you will eventually need to learn it somewhere down the line.
Okay, one final question. Sir, have you ever implemented AI in your app, and what are the methods which Arav is asking this? So, what are the methods to implement AI in
AI
an
in
application?
sense, like you
AI
want to
not
write a
not using it to code, but implementing it for some use case.
implementing for okay. I was talking about, like for example in Niva I need to write a
Yeah.
whole package of AI. It isn't using ChatGPT, it is using actually an algorithm. So the difference between an algorithm and just an API call from an chat GPT is that if you want to do an whole algorithm in your particular app, that's a very complex process. It's very you need a lot of research. I still haven't figured it out how to do it. And yeah, with AI, algorithms are very tough. If you want to do some simple chat GPT calls, call Gemini, call mid journey on your app, that's just API calls. If you do API calls, if you understand how to do retrofit, okay, HTTP get or calls, you'll be able to do Gemini and ChatGPT things. Those are just API keys and calling them. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
think.
I think Aditya, in his last question, wants to ask about Android open source project on which Android itself is based
Mhm.
on. So,
Oh,
so maybe he's asking about that.
and Android open source project is something interesting because it's very complex. I tried to understand Android open source. You understand that that is an operating system. It's one of the most typical topics that exists in our world. Apple, the you can count operating systems, Linux, Unix, Ubuntu, and all of these operating systems are one of the most complex things that have been written by humankind. So it's very difficult to contribute there. So,
Hmm.
but if you're just learning Android, please don't try to contribute into Android X, because that's very weird. Why would you contribute as a starter there? There are like 10 years developers contributing to that open source. Try to contribute to something smaller. And one more thing that I want to give advice is, do not contribute something insignificant to a open source contribute. Don't update readme files randomly. Please update something that
Yeah.
makes sense for the developer and actually add values to the user of that file. You wouldn't be able to develop anything in operating system, add new to the operating system that makes sense to Android OS, right? That's
Hmm.
very weird. I like I'm not that good of a developer too. I do not consider myself a good developer, like making a whole OS by myself. I have GitHub repos. If you want if you want me to give you the GitHub repo of how to develop your own OS, I can give you that. You can use that to develop your own compiler as well. But it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that. And please find small projects, contribute majorly into them. Your major contribution is like buying a right stock at a right time. If
Hmm.
you do a very good big contribution on something that is going to be big and used by many people in the future, like, so that open source contribution is like a stock that you've bought, and it will last for the whole lifetime as a developer. So do not contribute into very big things. That's just weird. Why would you do that? Don't do that. Do something small, then go into big.
Hmm. Hitesh, one final question before letting
Yes.
you go. I want to ask, and Aditya also wants to ask. What do you think of the Android or mobile community in India? Because compared to the web dev side of things, it's quite small. I would say it's almost like underrepresented. Even if I had to search for people when I was learning Android, I actually struggled a lot to find the communities and people who did these things. Like, I mean, compared to a web dev community. So, do you think that in general, uh, it's a good career path for someone like these in second or first year to maybe involve in these communities, because it's quite small compared to the web dev ones.
Yeah,
And
I
what?
also
Yes.
have this question in my mind. Like I remember when I had started Android development and get to know about this from this particular programming community. I'm really interested in doing Google Summer of Code 2023 program, but struggled a lot, literally a lot, in finding some specific Kotlin projects in GSOC community or in any other place to contribute. I sometimes
Not
I
just communities, but like tech influencers also. In content creation space also, you see most of the creators in India are from like they do web dev or backend or something.
right.
There is no
And
one big person who does
and this sometimes make creating personal resume and curriculum vitae a bit hard. So we would really like if you could put a light on this issue.
100%. The many what happens here is when it comes to app development. If what I thought was like, let me give you my example. I started with web development as well, right? Why? Because I saw some other people doing something in web. I followed them. I did HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I thought like it's not interesting enough. Then I switched to game development. I learned C hash, made my own game. I thought game development is very fun, but game development has its points because India will kill your game development career anytime. It did with PUBG.
Yes.
So yeah, don't be an app developer in
Blockchain
India until
development
you
also.
want. Yeah, please don't be that. If you want to go outside of India, you can just join Xbox. Maybe go to Japan. That's very good, bright futures for game developers. Please don't stay in India if you want to be a game developer. They will, kill your industry anytime they want to. And when it comes to the other thing that is left is called app development. Now I was tired of web development because the frameworks really make my headache because React, AngularJS, why do I need to learn these many frameworks and stuff to do this one particular website? Why do I need to do that? And that's just frustrated me so much. That's why just switched to app development. I started learning about apps, and apps seemed much more cooler than you know websites. What happens here is why are there so many websites React driven or web development part things on content marketing or open source is because they're easy to develop and they're easy to gain market value in. What happens here in apps is um, what kind of apps do you use in your mobile? There are only 15 to you know 30 apps that you use on day-to-day basis. They're major companies that you use. What happens here is there's very small, it's very hard to penetrate into someone's mobile because it's a very big and personal space. It's the part of my body right now, right? I carry this thing everywhere where I go. So it's the part of my body. It's very hard to penetrate into this thing. If you do penetrate, you're earning millions then. So app development, what happens here is SaaS businesses are really most of the SaaS businesses go to B2B, right? Business to business. And what happens is business have a lot of money, right? For example, medical, real estate owners, they have a lot of money. If you do inventory management for business, inventory manage for medical supply in government hospitals, that kind of product will have a great use case and will earn a lot of money. But if you try to do an app development for medical use cases like Tata Health Plus, something like that, it's very difficult to penetrate into the market and develop something like that. um, if you hear about any kind of startups that are around apps, for example, Zomato, Swiggy, all these are startups are losing money, a lot of money, to develop these kind of apps. That's why app development is very difficult as compared to web is much more easier, is much more faster to develop things. And what happens here is if there are many things in web, content marketing is also influenced by web, the many things in SaaS. What happens here is, for example, if there is a SaaS company hiring, right? Now you can show that SaaS company hiring as a YouTube thumbnail and attract the students to your program and your courses. That's exactly what many YouTubers do. And that's how the things work with the courses. App development, you cannot say Netflix mobile is hiring right now. It's very difficult to enter into Netflix app development. They will not let you enter into that. You need 10 years of experience to go into Netflix app development. It's very difficult out there. So that's why app development is, content is way lesser than web. And again, web is an oversaturated market. App is not that saturated. It is become saturated. It is becoming saturated over and over again. If you want to go one level higher and you want to play with a toy, start experimenting with VR and AR. These are the toys that will be the toys of the future somewhere down the line. I'm experimenting with the AR right now, so I'll keep on posting about one of my AR as well experiences on Twitter as well. But yeah, So that's how the things and content marketing economics work. Again, it's the part of the pacing layers that I've explained in the first slide, how pacing layers work, right? And that's how things play out.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. Uh, Sir, okay, one final question. This will be the last, I promise. Can
Yeah.
you share a few channel content creators like Philip Lackner that one should look for mobile development? Like, what
Maybe
are some of your
whatever,
recommendations?
whatever you really like when you are learning and starting this learning process.
There are many channels that I looked into. Let me open up my YouTube and see what I was looking at.
Sure.
And
uh,
yes, when you said that it was very hard to go in Netflix mobile application development, yes, I. So what will be your advice to us and the students of third year students who are in this Android community? How should we
mm.
move forward in pursuing our making a good career in mobile application development? Altogether, mobile application, not just Android.
Mobile application again, please look into how what the companies require, right? Learn
Hmm.
Flutter, learn these hybrid languages as well, because you are a developer, you are an engineer, you're not a programmer. Okay, you're
Yeah.
not here to have a bias of particular language. You have a bias of understanding logic and implementing them. You are an engineer, you're here to produce solutions for the customers, right? That's your role is. That's why you were hired. So that's what you got to do. Learn these languages as a tool to do what you want. Learn to architect from the very basic foundations of apps to the backend. Learn Ktor, make a whole backend in Ktor. Learn JS, make a whole backend in JS. You can follow Hitesh Chaudhary. He has a very good playlist on backend development. I learned a lot from backend from him. um, you can follow many developers and try to architect the whole thing from the start to the beginning. Do not waste time on indie development until unless you're sure. Now, one thing that I want to explore more is what happens here is I still have a bias in my head for like indie developers. What happens is what I'm thinking uh, is that what if I can make my own app and release it in public, make it a startup, find a VCs to invest in it. It's
Hmm.
very difficult to do that. It's
Too
very
difficult.
difficult to do that. So you need to figure out, even if you want to do that in your part time, what you need to do is find a very small use case of app. Small, construction workers have this particular problem. You are solving this with their app, this particular app, right? Go out and meet your ideal user. Take care. Just go out and meet your ideal user, understand what do they want, give the mobile in their hand. Once they
Hmm.
use this particular mobile, they will say, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Understand those points, write it down. Now what you have done is go out and find, if you have a friend, a UI designer, right? Make a UI of your design, but run ads on Facebook, Instagram, somewhere. And what happens here is if you run ads, you will eventually figure out how many people are actually clicking on the ad and entering their email. If like there is a percentage rate of conversion between how many people have viewed your ad as compared to how many people who have given their email, if this rate is really high, it means this app might have a real use case in the world, and you might be able to produce it as
Sure.
a money generating machine. So
Hmm.
that's how you
Look
do
for
things.
the look. Don't look for the problem for your solution.
100%. Don't just go around inventing things out of the blue. Please
Yeah.
look for your ideal customers first.
Yeah.
Now, that's how you do that. And yeah, my advice for myself in third year would be, please start coding, code a lot every day, and learn to architect from the very basic foundation to the very big foundation of back into front end, everything. Learn CI/CD, learn DevOps, learn everything that you can. You are an engineer, you can learn
Work
everything. You are
hard
not
and
just a
things
front end
will
developer.
be on the way.
Mm. Okay. Thank you, sir, for having us. I won't take any more of your time. It's already past
Yeah.
12. I have well. Me and Priyanshu are actually very, very glad for having you. We were planning this session. We actually, to be honest, we wanted both of us to talk to you anyways, but
Yeah,
this session only labeled us that. And thanks, guys, for joining us till now. I know not many people are there, but still,
yeah.
thanks, Hitesh.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for inviting me as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
I hope we get to talk a lot more after this. I mean,
Sure,
do you
sure.
like this? I mean, it was more of a conversation.
100%. You can, like, if you want another session, I'll be available. Let me know.
Oh, sure,
And if you
sure,
want a
sure, sure.
coding session as well, we can do that as well. We'll look
Yeah, yeah,
into it
sure, sure.
afterwards. Okay. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next
That
time.
was really courteous of you, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Hitesh. Thanks, guys. We will end the meet in a minute. Thanks.